thank you very much, Ini. The optimism you certainly are feeling on business is really so palpable. But just before we go into our next conversation, this is just to let our viewers on the DSTV platform know that we will be joining the FCT Minister Media Parley live on our DSTV platform. But Sunrise Daily continues on all our other platforms, including some of our online platforms. So please stay with us. And just talking about the conversations we're going to be having about now, we're going to be talking to His Excellency Joseph Ayalogu, former permanent representative to the United Nations, who is joining us via Zoom from London. We have to thank him so much for his patience and for staying with us this morning. Well, Your Excellency, yesterday the news broke that the president has now ordered Nigeria to also comply with the ECOWAS resolutions reached on February the 24th. And as a result of that, our relationship with Niger looks like it's about to kickstart full and afresh again. All sanctions, or almost all of the sanctions which were imposed against Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and I think Guinea have now been removed. But more specifically, the statement which was issued from the presidency was very specific about Nigeria's relationship with Niger. What did you make of that statement when you saw it yesterday, sir?
Well, thank you, Mark. I was relieved. I think I'm one of the many that have felt that ECOWAS was a little bit heavy-handed and at the outset, but in imposing quite a lot of sanctions, and particularly for Nigeria, that there has Niger as his closest neighbor and brother and friend, and that it wasn't consistent with our foreign policy to be at variance to that point with our neighbors. So it came as a welcome relief to me, and I'm sure that the expectations, that the tensions that surrounded our bilateral relations, even relations within the ECOWAS would begin to thaw out, and so that we would probably see a change. We would definitely want to see a change in relations, and that we also hope would encourage the Niger and the other Francophone countries that seem to be wanting to pull out to begin to get themselves back into the fold, because they are better off with the fold than out of it.
Does this mark an end? Because initially, I think I heard you say that Nigeria and ECOWAS were initially quite heavy-handed. Some people would say we're talking about democracy here. We're talking about something as deviant as a coup, which negates everything that a democracy stands for. We'll come to that shortly. But for you, do you think that this marks the end of the agitations for a return to a democracy in these countries where the sanctions have now been lifted? Whether it will mark the beginning of come again, please. The end to the agitations for a return to democracy or to a democratic rule in the countries where the sanctions have not been lifted?
No, I don't think so. They all know, or they should know, that the ultimate is that they return to democracy, back to democracy. So I can understand that they want to put their houses in order at their own pace. But nobody should doubt that their end game is return to democratic governance, and I don't see them misunderstanding this new move by ECOWAS removing sanctions as a guarantee that everything, that the status quo is what will continue. That is the current status quo of a military governance. I don't think so. what would obviously pan out that I would say this is the beginning of a process that will allow more engagement and gradually allow the country to structure how it gets back to democratic governance without too much of pressure.
You say that ECOWAS was initially heavy-handed, but I was also trying to, express the fact that these countries have agreed to, uphold democratic rule. How strongly do you think that ECOWAS could have sent the message initially to these countries where democracy had been upturned, that what they had done was, totally unacceptable?
Perhaps, well, maybe I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I still believe that was a little bit heavy-handed. Yes, there could have been other ways. Declaring that it was an illegal act to take over government by force is already enough. It's a message. It could even have led to a suspension of the countries, but not necessarily closing borders, frustrating a lot of economic and social activities. That's how I see it, as a bit heavy-handed, because a lot of people suffered because of these border closures and all the other sanctions.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, some of the, how citizens in those countries now accept how they receive these sanctions that have now been lifted. And yes, you certainly make the point that oftentimes when the sanctions are imposed, it is the citizens that tend to suffer more. People who are just trying to get by and do their everyday business. Even people in Nigeria were complaining about how difficult it had become to do business with Niger. But I'm looking at the slew of sanctions now, which the president has directed that be lifted immediately. He talked about the closure of land and air borders between Nigeria and Niger Republic, suspension of all commercial and financial transactions between Nigeria and Niger, as well as freeze of all service transactions, freeze of assets of the Republic of Niger in ECOWAS central banks, suspension of Niger from all financial assistance and transactions with all financial institutions. And then the last one, travel ban on government officials and their family members. So it will seem all of the sanctions, because if the argument had been that, ordinary citizens were suffering as a result of this, and it really makes no difference to government officials, what do we make of even this last one, where, government officials had been barred, government officials and their families had been barred from traveling to some ECOWAS countries? Does it really make any sense that we have now decided to lift all of the sanctions on these countries?
Well, let's not go into the finer points. The point is that all the sanctions have been removed. There is a purpose to it. I would argue that or observe that the sanctions we are seeing in a negative sense by the sanctions, as Niger and the other countries, which was why they took certain steps. And the ECOWAS it's a deliberate action, wants to prevent the potential splitting of the community, the ECOWAS community. So they're actually holding out a white flag in a way. We just expect that those countries, Niger and others, will reciprocate. So that is the sense of removal of almost all, I would say all of the sanctions. It's a white flag. It's expected that they will reciprocate, and let's just watch and see what they do.
So it doesn't appear that they have offered anything in return just yet, or even indicated.
Not yet, but Not yet, but I don't think we should rush them. They'll take their time.
What would you say? I mean, how would you say that this, offers a disincentive to other countries where ideas like this might be brewing in the minds of, say, of undemocratic forces? Let me put it that way.
Well, it's not actually. It's possible to say that these coups take place because they see what others did. But, deep down, coups come as a result of the state or situation of governance in those countries, in each country. So each country has its own story. And it all boils down to how are they governed, how do they receive governance, how does democracy really play out, democracy and development. How do they trust their leaders? So that's if we all accept that point, it means that when the leaders of ECOWAS go to their countries and play the game of governance, transparency, accountability, and respect for the rule of law and so on, it will be very hard to really see coups be festering. Yes.
Well, I know that my colleague Ayo also has some questions for you. Ayo.
Thank you very much, Mark. Your Excellency, the number one question that I would want to ask you is, do you think this, the border closure has had any significant effect until now?
Oh, I think so, because the information we get, especially in fact from both sides of the border, Nigerians were complaining. I had complaints that the price of onions have gone sky high, and so on. There was definitely an impact, negative one, or an impact that was not received at all. I mean, you remember that even the fly zone, Nigeria flights coming from Europe to Nigeria had to start to make arrangements. They couldn't overfly Niger. These are inconveniences, and perhaps had very serious impact on the flight situations. There were impacts, definitely. And of course, our borders are really porous. You might say because they are porous and things people had their way around the sanctions, but definitely it would have added some cost.
Diplomatically, do you think it's achieved anything it was supposed to achieve by any measure? You mean the sanctions? Not really. The sanctions, I think, had a different impact. It was meant to nudge those governments, Niger especially, into quick action in returning to democracy. Instead, it exacerbated their emotions. So, in a way, you might say it didn't work. That's why I earlier hinted that perhaps some soft play would have been better than the heavy-handedness that was applied much earlier. It leads to this question, Your Excellency. Your Excellency. Who also have this impression that the initial action of ECOWAS, which, of course, as you just said now, didn't make the expected impact, led to some kind of weakness in the posture of ECOWAS. What would you say to that? Well,
ECOWAS is not it's not a government. It's not a supranational government. It's a gathering of willing minds, countries that have agreed to come together to achieve largely economic, social integration and their benefits. So we shouldn't overplay the issue of whether they lose face or they lose authority. or anything. There isn't much of an authority. The important thing about ECOWAS is that keep the camaraderie, the ambience together. I mean, let every country work and accept the arrangements for integration and development of the region. So I don't see that from the point of whether the ECOWAS lost face or did it. So if we take that away, ECOWAS made a mistake. They corrected it. We hope that it will bring all the other countries back to the fold so that we can continue with the main objective of socio-economic integration of the sub-region.
Well, one of the reasons that I asked that question, Your Excellency, is a statement attributed to the fact that another member of the ECOWAS, Ghana, didn't completely cut ties with one of its own neighbors. In the middle of all of this melee. For instance, we were told that they were still supplying electricity to one of those nations that was supposed to have been suspended. About Nigeria, we cut the ties. That is why what that question came up in the first place. Leading to this one, Your Excellency, is there anything? I mean, you said that ECOWAS now needs to go back and re-engineer itself. What are the things that the bloc must do now so that we can achieve what you said now, which is the economic development of the region?
Well, there are lots of things that ECOWAS can do. Emphasize on economic development. Take a leaf from what other sub-regional gatherings are doing, EU and so on. Well, I also feel that the ECOWAS should begin to look at what certain superpowers or powers are doing in the region. For instance, I can see that Soviet Union, Russia is quite close and doing things in Mali. These could be distractions. The EU can also look at what exactly is the neo-colonialist French policy in the region. And by the time we take in all these issues, we will get round to the specific matters of currency, single currency, movement, duties, and so on. All the aspects of sub-regional integration will come into play. It's been happening in other areas. ECOWAS, EU is a good example. We take example from regions that have done it well and emphasize on these aspects instead of occasionally. And once we do that, the issue of democracy would easily pick in. Good democracy, good governance, especially. And we wouldn't hear of coups, we wouldn't be bothering about the politics and so on. But the benefits of integration will definitely come to play.
Leads also to Your Excellency to what ECOWAS as a region can do to forestall further coups. There are those who have also argued that perhaps even the coupists, they're saying that, look, one of the reasons for this is because, look, ECOWAS is quick to say we're not doing what we're supposed to do, that we shouldn't, have coups in our country. But ECOWAS doesn't also do anything to foster good governance that could also mitigate the incidences of coups. Do you see any role really? Because some would argue that the reason that heads of state sit together is to do some kind of peer review among themselves so that they can have good governance that will forestall any occurrences of coups and all of that. What's your take on that?
No, I agree. That's what I was driving at. That ECOWAS, if we face the issues of good governance, delivery of good economics to the people, so that people are happier with whoever rules them, then you probably will not hear about coups anymore, most likely. And of course, once you even hear about a coup, the people themselves will be agitators. And you can see that the reverse is the case so far, because the Nigerians have not actually come out robustly against the coup. So it tells you that the background of the coup is largely bad governance. So if ECOWAS pushes the issues of peer review, of good governance, and so on, that will be addressing the issue of coups right at the roots. And that's the best, instead of jumping up and when there's a coup, then they do all these things. Whereas we don't do much to even protect real democracy. Elections that are aborted or not carried out the way they should be, these are all signs that democracy is being undermined.
How quickly do you see business getting back in the region?
Those people that you talked about that have been affected severely by the economics of these occurrences, how quickly do you see business, the economic life getting back as a result of this new pronouncement of President Tinubu?
Well, I mean, there shouldn't be any delay. They've had it announced in clear terms that the borders are open and so on, so that officials will kick in quickly. And it shouldn't take long. It's too long, because a lot of people were hoping that these sanctions are removed. And once they're removed, give it a week, 2 weeks, you can see a rush of action.
Businesses between the two countries will resume, particularly within the border region of both countries, particularly Nigeria and Niger, because we understand that this was not only just to Niger, it was also extended to Guinea as well. Can you hear me, Excellency? Oh, can you still hear? Because we can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear us?
Yeah, okay, I can hear you now. I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I was saying that this was also extended to Guinea as well. I think it was just about 2 days ago the president received a special envoy from Guinea. And we understand that this has also been extended to Guinea. And we believe that businesses between citizens of the countries will resume. However, the relationship between the governments of both countries is what we're uncertain of. You have said that, and you have said we're yet to see anything from them. We shouldn't rush them. But people will be wondering, how quickly do you think that we should get some response from the governments of these countries where the sanctions have not been lifted?
Well, you know, governments don't, just as they say, you don't have permanent friends, you don't have permanent enemies. So now that the official issues that was preventing interaction have been removed, whatever needs to happen will automatically flow. Officials will move. There shouldn't be any problem. The only difficulty now would probably be the Ramadan fasting, that everybody is slowing down. Otherwise, we shouldn't take long. There hadn't been that much damage done at the official level or diplomatic level, so it's not like there were irritants, but it's not that deep down. It's not something that will take too much time to recover from. If a Nigerian delegation wants to go to Niger now, the Nigerians will not have a problem about it, and vice versa. So I'm optimistic that things would go on, will get up and will get back to what it was. What I would advise is that even our expectations about getting the coupists returned back to the barracks we should also allow them a lot more time, sometime, not a matter of expecting that to happen in the next 1, 2, or 3, 4 months, even 1 year. What ECOWAS should be doing is to watch how these countries are running their countries, because if their countries begin, if the juntas begin to undermine the rights and of the governed and so on, then there's likely to be a problem in the country, and ECOWAS would then have to call them to order. But once they are running things well, we should let them choose their time to have their elections and so on.
Oh, well, Ambassador, we certainly will keep tabs on things happening in Niger and these other countries and watch developments, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up with you again. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Early this morning and being so patient with us. We really appreciate your time with us.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, that's where we wrap up the program this beautiful Thursday morning. Can't believe it's Thursday already. Thank you so much for being a part of the program. Hopefully we'll be taking all of your feedback all together tomorrow. Thank you for watching this Thursday. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
You have a wonderful day, and be sure of one thing: Nigeria is yours. Depends on what you make of it. Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.